11 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Zoning Board of Adjustment. First thing is first, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes from July. Do you have any objections, questions on the minutes? Have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second? Second. All right. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. So the purpose of these proceedings is to hear all pertinent testimony regarding the proposed variances. This hearing is required by law to approve any variance to the City of Longview zoning ordinance and signed ordinance. The procedure to be followed today is as follows. The public hearing will be open on a request for variance, and testimony will be heard in the following order. The applicant, second, the city planner, 3, those in support and opposition to the request, 4, applicant's rebuttal. If you are part of a large group with a common interest, we ask that you appoint a spokesperson rather than have each individual restate the same information. When addressing the board, please begin stating your name and address. When all sides have spoken, the public hearing on the matter will be closed and no further discussion entertained. The board will then vote on the matter. Please remember that you are a participant in a legal proceeding with your peers. And outbursts such as applause and cheering are not appropriate and can only be considered as attempts to intimidate members of the board. So a public hearing will be to consider application number V19-08 filed by Lamar Companies for a variance to the requirements of the City of Longview Siding Ordinance, Chapter 85, Section 85 through 52. Michael, do you have any staff comments?
Sure, and if you want to call up the applicant to
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
let them talk first.
We'll go ahead and have Lamar come up, the applicant, and speak, or whoever's speaking on behalf of Lamar.
Hi, my name is Mark Priestner. I'm with Planning Concepts out of Tyler, 3815 Old Bullard Road. And I'm speaking in part on behalf of the applicant. Lamar is here as well. But I want to kind of go through the basics of what we're asking for and kind of just the, where we are, why we're here today. What we're asking for is a variance to the requirement or the prohibition of digital face billboards or digital faces on billboards that's in the current ordinance. The 3 locations, and it looks like when you look through the application request, it looks like a lot of items, but it's really not. There are 3 existing signs that already are in place. They're not new, they're already there, they're not any closer, any taller, any bigger than what is currently in place. What the applicant is proposing is to take off one of the static faces on each of those 3 locations and replace it with a digital sign. So why are we doing all of this? Well, this all comes back to everybody is familiar with the Waffle House and the Highway 80 property. There is a development that's in play. There's a current existing sign on that location that is an old 3-sided billboard. All static signs, but it's a single post 3-sided billboard. In order to get rid of the remainder of the lease, in order to redevelop that property, what the applicant is asking for is to be able to put up these digital signs in existing locations around the loop or around different locations in town. So it still requires the same 2-to-1 credits. It still requires all the same requirements that are in the billboard ordinance, and all of those will still be met. It's just simply taking 3 existing locations, removing a static sign and putting up a digital sign. So when we start looking at the ordinance itself and why we're asking for this, this is digital signs or something that has been coming up. The City of Longview last updated their sign ordinance in 2003. That was 16 years ago. Excuse me? Okay, so it was updated in 2003, 16 years ago. When you look around this room, you're looking at these screens right now. These are digital signs. These were not here 16 years ago. If you guys remember, there's a screen that comes out of this wall right here. So why do we use these? Technology is different. They're more efficient. You can update the information faster. Does it make this any more distracting than if you had that same picture on a poster on the wall? It does not. Our contention and what we're looking at is just that we want to have things that keep developing Longview, the things that people are looking for when they're coming here. And what we're saying is that we feel that these digital billboards are not detrimental in any way to the city. This is not Las Vegas. They're not blinking, flashing, chasing signs. They're not. There are the regulations that are in place can make these as static as any other sign. And as you start looking at examples in other cities, with the exception of the coloration of them, it's hard to tell what's a static sign and what's a digital sign. There are a lot of benefits to them in that you can update them more often. They can do Amber Alerts. They can do PSA messages. You don't have the gun show ad that was 3 months ago sitting up on a sign that's falling down. There are a lot of benefits to them. The scary thing is always, okay, they're overly bright. They're going to cause wrecks. And what we're seeing is the cities that have adopted them have the regulations in place that has not been the issue. The brightness of the signs can be adjusted. There are maximums that can be placed on them. Even at nighttime, we just haven't had the same issues. And we feel that the need for the redevelopment of the Highway 80 frontage and the potential for that project just is enough of an impotence to make this happen, that it's not a big scary animal. And we're not asking for new signs that are more non-conforming and trying to put them in a neighborhood. They're existing locations, they're existing signs. What we're asking for is no taller, no bigger, no different than what's there. They're actually going to reduce the square footage of the sign faces. But that's kind of the gist of what we're doing, and I will turn it over to Lamar to finish up with that.
Thanks.
My name's Dan Noyes, 3400 West Marshall Avenue. I'm with Lamar Advertising. We got involved with this project over 1 year ago when we were contacted by the group at Woodmont and John King as it pertains to the property located at Spur 63 and Highway 80, where the waffle shop is located. And we were asked if we would consider removing the sign that Mark had referred to in order to make way for the development that they are proposing. Our business model consists primarily of leasing arrangements that we have with landowners where our signs are located. In this particular case, a long-term lease is in place with several years left on it, and we're just not in the business of removing those signs when those circumstances exist. So we were posed with, is there anything that would work somehow for you to consider removing that sign? So here we are a year later, having worked on several different avenues to figure something out, which has brought these variance requests here today. It would involve us removing in total 9 sign panels, each one being 672 square feet. So we'd be removing 9 of those in total, and then converting 3 existing signs, the 3 signs that are the subject signs that we're talking about, back with 2 378 square foot panels. So they'd be uniform back-to-back panels, one side a traditional static billboard face, the other side being a digital face. So in this pool of signs, that's almost 3 times the square footage that we'd be removing from that pool. And then of course the variance is being requested, the height variance. We have the 3 existing signs at the heights they are today that are visible and seen from the roadway. And it just doesn't make sense for us to change those to be less than that so they can't be seen. We would just be better off leaving them as they are and just move on down the road. And so we have the spacing from other signs, the spacing from residential. We basically need all those variances, and the variances approved at all 3 sites to just move forward with the project. There's some photos there that you have with the current locations as we've been seeing on the screens here. Some samples of digital signs during the daylight, traditional signs at night compared with digital signs at night to see the similarities there. So that's basically the nuts and bolts of it. Throughout the course of the hearing, if you have any questions, let me know.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You have Mark, so we have Mark Priestner and then Dan Noyes. Anybody else from the applicant? Okay. Staff comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, as the applicant stated, they are requesting a variance, to the City of Longview sign ordinance to allow for a digital billboard sign, the first of which that we're considering is located at 611 East Marshall Avenue. As you've read in your staff report, after discussion with the applicant and information that was provided, they are proposing to remove, as stated, one side of the static billboard and replace it with a digital face. The overall height of this current sign located at 611 would remain at 49 feet 6 inches. Based on that information, it will exceed the maximum billboard height requirement of 35 feet, minimum separation distances of 3,000 feet between billboards, and minimum separation distance of 1,500 feet from residentially zoned districts. As he stated, one of the things that they're looking at this as considering this as just kind of a swap out and not calling it a new billboard. And I'll kind of go through, I want to kind of go through the history of the ordinance, because as they mentioned, the original ordinance was adopted in 2002, and that has been some time. But as I go through my presentation, you'll see some themes in there that it's still very relevant. The original task force was established in June 13th of 2002. At that time, the community, along with City Council, wanted to improve the appearance of Longview as it relates to signage, both on-premise and off-premise, because at that time, the sign regulations for both were pretty unrestrictive. At that time, City Council actually enacted a moratorium on billboards that prohibited any new billboards, any replacements, anything related to that would constitute a new billboard. And that initial one was for 4 months. Throughout the process, the sign task force, as they were going through that process, extended. Throughout that time period, they actually extended it 2 additional times on that moratorium, the last time until July 31st of 2003. So as we got through that process, the sign ordinance was actually adopted in 3 phases. That gave time for them to present each section of the ordinance to council and let them adopt it, the last being in 2003. So that was where we were as far as adopting the new ordinance, was in 2003. And so between then and now, we've had the ordinance as it sits as far as the prohibition of billboard replacement without meeting those restrictive standards. In 2005, though, we had some cases that came about. Lamar at that time had done some work on some signs downtown Longview on Green Street. It included some replacement of poles and some of the structural components. Through that process, the Construction Advisory and Appeals Board actually heard a case where they clarified the ordinance that, in that case, the replacement of the sign panels, not the media, constituted a new sign, and thus affirmed staff's interpretation that it would constitute a new sign. Also, they appealed to this board, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, in September 19th of 2006 for the same thing, and the board affirmed at that time that the removal of the poles and such, that did constitute a new sign, even though it was an existing location, and would kick in the requirements, would cause them to lose their non-conforming status. Through that process, it actually went through district court. District court affirmed that. went to appeals court. Appeals court actually heard two pieces of it. They heard a constitutional takings component, which they affirmed in the city's favor, and they actually dismissed the case on the other portion of it because there were some technicalities on the way that it was filed, and so they said that it was not the correct way. But they made some comments in there, though, that it was part of the jurisdiction of the zoning board in order to make those kind of decisions, and made comment on that. That's important because what they've stated is that we're only changing a static to a digital. It's an existing sign, it's an existing location, it's existing height. But under our currently adopted ordinance, which has withstood over the years, that is a new sign, which kicks in a loss of nonconforming status, which would require compliance with height, setback, distance from other billboards, distance from residential areas, all of the things that our community has said is important through our sign regulations. Another interesting point is in 2006, Lamar also requested a variance to allow for replacement of nonconforming billboard with digital billboards, much like what we're looking at today. It was a location just off of Bill Owens at the Loop. They were going to take that sign and replace both sides with digital. Came before this board, and this board denied that request unanimously, saying that that was outside the role of what the ordinance was calling for. Fast forward to 2008, we're getting along with the digital technology. We're starting to see more of the digital signs on the on-premise. So at that time, Mayor Dean created a mayor's task force to address the electronic signage. At that time, one of their first comments was, we're not gonna address billboards. We're only gonna address the on-premise signage. We're not opening the door to digital billboards at this time. So they specifically wrote into the ordinance that we continue, and moving forward, we don't want to have digital billboards. And through that process, they went so far as to, pretty significantly restrict on-site digital signage to 64 square feet in total size, 20 feet in maximum height. So it wasn't just an on-premise, off-premise, it was the actual technology itself that they felt like those are appropriate, but in small doses. That we don't want to have every sign digital. We don't want to, we're not ready to go there. So they specifically at that time addressed it and put regulations in place. So, talking about the loss of nonconforming status, as I stated before, Section 8581, if the sign's dismantled for any purpose other than just general maintenance or changing the actual advertising media or matter, the paper or the letters, or the banner-like stuff that they use, anything beyond that is considered a loss of nonconforming status. So when you get to the changeable copy signs and really look at what the ordinance details is appropriate, all changeable copy signs have to follow, and there's a list of things that I'll go through, and I'll kind of skim over some of them because I don't want to take up too much of your time. All changeable copy signs, first and foremost, shall not be used as off-premise signs, provided, however, that changeable copy signs may be used as non-commercial signs. So that would be like, that is for like freedom of speech type things. As previously stated, maximum area 64 square feet, maximum height 20 feet, not allowed in residential areas and such, have a minimum hold time, and some of those are industry standards. So very specific in the changeable copy sign regulations that they're not to be used as off-premise signs. They are to be restricted to a very small, very low in height standard. And then following with, as Mr. Priestner said, the animation and the lighting and all of that is one piece of that, but the billboard technology or the digital technology was the main focus of the size and such. When you get into the billboard off-premise sign requirements, first and foremost, a 2-to-1 removal replacement basis. So you have to take down twice the amount of square footage to put up a new one. That new one has to meet all of the regulations. So overall height of 35 feet, not to exceed that. Not to be located to create a safety hazard or obstruct driver's view. It can't be located, as I had already mentioned, within 1,500 feet of any residentially zoned area. Maximum size area 400 feet, and then the minimum separation of 3,000 feet. And if you look at that, you're like, that's pretty restrictive. And I think that was the intent at the time, was in lieu of an all-out prohibition on billboards, they wanted to set the tone that we want to over time reduce the number of billboards. We want to reduce sign clutter. Community appearance is very important to us, and so this is a way that it can be done if you can meet these standards. It's not an all-out prohibition, but it is very restrictive. One of the main things, the purpose of the sign ordinance, and that kind of tells us a lot about what they were thinking at that time as well. The purpose of the chapter is to provide uniform sign regulations for the city of Longview that balance the right of individuals and businesses to identify themselves and convey messages with the right of the public to be protected against the unrestricted proliferation of signs. It is further intended to encourage signs which are well designed, which preserve locally recognized values of community appearance, which protect public investment in and the character of public thoroughfares, which aid in the attraction of shoppers and other visitors who are important to the economy of the city, which reduce hazards to motorists and pedestrians traveling on the roadways, and thereby promote the public health, safety, and welfare. These provisions shall be the minimum requirements in the installation, erection, location, alteration, replacing, improving, and maintenance of all signs. So everywhere we look, it's not that there's, the technology wasn't there or it's out of date. I think that the greater purpose of balancing community appearance with signage, and it can even be seen in the most recent comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, which was our most recent community involvement process, where we had, I don't know if any of y'all were involved in that process, but the amount of people that came out, spoke, and filled out all of the online surveys and everything was overwhelming. One of the statements in the comprehensive plan is Longview needs to create improved commercial development guidelines that specifically address building facades, materials, landscaping, and signage. The goal for the new commercial development guidelines are to improve the overall aesthetics along non-residential areas and their longevity and viability. In addition, and based on citizen input during the comprehensive planning process, Longview needs to adopt a property maintenance code in order to address property conditions concerning adjacent owners and area residents. And finally, uniform commercial sign standards can provide visual consistency and reduce visual clutter. In order to accomplish the goals related to community image, Longview must maintain stringent commercial sign regulations for both on-premise and off-premise signage. So that was in our most recent comprehensive plan. So yes, our ordinance was created 2003. We had a mayor's task force in 2008, 2009 that affirmed that we're on that same path and further defined what's appropriate for digital technology, that it's on-premise, not off-premise. And then furthermore, in our comprehensive plan, we further detail that community image is very important to, promoting Longview. They mentioned some ideas about this being part of a redevelopment process. However, what I'm asking you to consider is the application as submitted, and that application just says, we want a variance from the rules because digital signs are prohibited. There's nothing in the application, and there's nothing that would allow us to say, if we grant that variance, that we can hold them to removing that other sign. There's nothing contractually that we can do to say or to ensure that if this variance was adopted, that once those digital faces go up, that sign comes down and that property gets redeveloped into anything of what they've proposed. That gets into kind of if you let me do this, then I'll do this. And in the zoning world, that's contractual zoning, which is frowned upon by the courts as an illegal use of transfer of power, saying that we'll rezone a piece of property if you do this or that, or if you rezone it, I'll do this. It's a very similar comparison with what they're asking you to do. If you look in the sign ordinance as far as what the standards are for considering a variance, that's very important, because a variance may be granted by the Board of Adjustment or Construction Advisory and Appeals Board as applicable, where all of the following criteria are met.
What page are we on?
This is just in my notes, and we have it up here. On the board. Yeah. A literal application of this chapter would not allow the property to be used for a sign. The granting of the requested variance would not be materially detrimental to the property owners in the vicinity. A literal application of this chapter would result in an undue hardship for the sign user. The term hardship includes only conditions resulting from a literal interpretation of this chapter and that are due to conditions unique to the property in question. The term does not include any condition that would apply generally to the city or that is present generally throughout the city. The term does not include any condition that is in any way a result of the applicant's own action. The term does not include a self-created or personal condition or a purely financial condition. Simply dividing a building into multiple occupancies shall not be sufficient grounds for granting a variance. Applications for a variance may only be accepted when the site complies with this chapter. Variance requests shall not be accepted for a sign that has already been installed in violation of this chapter before the submission of the variance request. All variance application fees are paid. The variance does not authorize a use in a zoning district in which the use is prohibited by this chapter, and the granting of the variance would not be contrary to the general objectives of this chapter. So I think when you're looking at what we're really charged to do and what a true variance is, when you say it wouldn't be materially detrimental to property owners in the vicinity, I think we've submitted some letters from adjacent property owners that claim otherwise. A big part of that is this term does not include any condition that would apply generally to the city or that is present generally throughout the city. The whole basis of their argument is the ordinance doesn't allow it. That applies generally throughout the city. There's nothing unique to this property or to any other properties that they're claiming hardship on. They're just merely saying, we don't like the rules, we don't want to follow them, and if you let us put the digital signs up, we'll take down another sign somewhere else that is tied to community sentiment. So when you look at granting a variance that would not be contrary to the general objectives of this chapter, everything that they're asking for, if you look at the billboard section, if you look at the digital section on the changeable copy signs, it's contrary to almost every line item. There's not hardly any one piece that they're not asking for a variance for. It would be one thing if they were asking for a variance to say, you know what, we can meet 90% of the objectives of the ordinance, but there's one piece that we're just a little bit shy of for whatever reason, and they gave a compelling argument that it was consistent and unique for that piece of property. That's a consistent application, an appropriate application of a variance. What I would ask the board to do would be to look at this request as an opportunity to, and remember that, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, so it is a little bit different than, say, what council does and what P&Z does. They look at things that are going to have impact across the community. Quasi-judicial means you look at the situation independently of all of that. You look at the unique characteristics of the specific site of the specific application. They've not provided any of that. They're not asking us to do that. They're asking us to essentially legislate them, bypass the legislative process, and allow them to not meet the ordinance in exchange for removing a sign somewhere else that would promote development. I'm all for the redevelopment of that property. I don't think there's anybody in Longview that's not for the redevelopment of that property, but it really has nothing to do with the merits of each one of these locations, with what the ordinance says and with what the Zoning Board of Adjustment is really charged to do. And in my opinion, granting of a variance absent of findings consistent with the ordinance is in excess of the board's discretionary powers. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Now, how do you put a board in place to address things like this, then you say that's not what you're up there for? It's kind of contradictory in that way you worded it. So, how did it get this far if it was so far out of line?
And I'll say that it parallels any judicial process. When you go file a lawsuit or you go file a case, there's nobody that's going to say, no, you can't do that. That's the purpose of that public process, is to go through and determine. That's the board's ability, is to look at it and make that decision. I'm telling you from my opinion that that's what the ordinance says, and that's what you're charged with doing. It's up to you to determine that based on the facts given today at the hearing.
So if we did vote for it, it wouldn't be abided by?
I'm sorry?
What would the city do? Would there be any kind of reciprocation there, or it would go forward?
So you're...
A lot of it's subjective.
Yeah, so this board is the final say in variance cases. It can be appealed at the district court level, and that would be based on any kind of illegal action or anything like that, or, if it was some kind of arbitrary decision or something that didn't meet a finding, if it wasn't consistent with the findings as laid out in the authority.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Michael?
Yeah, one question. Do we have any existing digital signs that are permitted currently?
The only signs that I'm aware of are on-premise signs.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. We'll open this next section up for anyone in support or opposition to the request. So I've got some speaker cards. I have a Gary or Carrie. All right. You approach the podium. Thanks.
I'll respond to either.
All right.
But Grant Gary with the Woodmont Company for the variance request here today. First and foremost, just want to say thank you to all of you on the board for the time and consideration, as well as thank you for everyone for being here today. We are the proposed developer or redeveloper of the site at Highway 80 and Spur 63. I'm with the Woodmont Company. We are a national brokerage, development, and management company. We're based in Dallas-Fort Worth, although I'll just say we've had the good fortune of having great relationship with John King and a number of other stakeholders and citizens here in the Longview community. As I said, going back to when we had re-tenanted some of the blockbusters here in Longview, and then again most recently, we were able to be involved with the redevelopment, I'll call it, of the Northwest Village Shopping Center at the Loop in Gilmer, and bringing in the Big Lots and the Burks and the Aldi and a couple of the other tenants there as well. So certainly, have had a good experience and certainly value our time and opportunity in Longview, and have enjoyed working on this subject project, that part what we're talking about here today. And I'll just make a couple of mentions. I think when we first sat down with Michael and Angela, it's probably almost 2 years ago now, on the particular project, and I think as John can certainly attest to, when we first started evaluating the viability of developing the subject site, which I think many would argue is one of the gateways into the city of Longview, certainly the way we've come in for many years. There were certainly inherent challenges that couldn't be overcome with the site. It's a very small parcel. It's got, certain access components to it. It's got certain grading components to it. There's considerations in actually going in and demoing the building, all things that frankly pose challenges in effectuating a redevelopment of that site. So as we continued evaluating all of those different opportunities, one of those chief challenges was the existing billboard on site from an access standpoint, from a visibility standpoint, that really did, when you look at all the various ways to redevelop that site, that was one of those and still is an impediment to that redevelopment. So from that standpoint, as we, again, evaluated a number of different users, a number of different site plans, a number of different access points, really the conclusion was at that time that the billboard did need to be removed in order to effectuate the redevelopment of that site. That remains to be the case today. And as Dan attested to, that was really when the conversation started. And let me say, there were other challenges, asbestos in the building. There's a water line that needs to be extended to that site, and again, the grades. But that was really when we began to say, we want to see this project through. This is something we think that would be a great catalyst, not only for this intersection, not only for the city, but other redevelopment along Highway 80. And that is why, again, we're here today. That's why we've been working on this project, I think, for over 2 years now. And certainly look forward to having the opportunity to see the development through. As I said, we are at the ready to take the next step in our process from a development process and move forward. Again, we've done our due diligence. We've identified the challenges. And again, it's our belief that this is the one outstanding item that would otherwise prohibit us from moving forward. And I can say today that it will prohibit us from moving forward to the extent that we're not able to obtain the variance here today and continue with the redevelopment of that site. So again, we're here available for questions, but we certainly appreciate the consideration today and the partnership that we've had here with the city over the years.
Thanks, Mr. Gary. Appreciate it. Next, we have Lloyd Nichols. Approach the bench. Not the bench, but the podium.
My name's Lloyd Nichols, 1930 Stonehill Drive, Tyler, Texas. And I was told by every member of the Case family that's still around that you shouldn't come from Tyler and try to speak to people in Longview in situations like this. But I'm coming as the past president of the East Texas Restaurant Association. And in case we don't know in the room, our purpose of the Restaurant Association, other than being an advocate for restaurants, we raise money for culinary students, both high school and college level, year-round. Here in town, Longview High School, Hallsville, Pine Tree, we raise money for them. We give grants to the culinary instructors to assist their programs. We participate actively every year. The Taste of Longview, the Taste of Tyler, our golf tournaments are all built to raise money for culinary students. We fund scholarships at Kilgore Junior College, Tyler Junior College, Stephen F. Austin. One scholarship's named for Johnny Case, one's for Gerard Case, great legends in our industry. So we are there to raise monies for workforce development and furthering culinary programs. We gave out more than $60,000 in the last 18 months, and we've seen our money for these programs double in the last year and a half because of Lamar's donation. What Lamar does with digital boards is they take a percentage of the time on those digital boards and they donate to nonprofits like ourselves. So when we're leading up to an event like our golf tournament, the Taste of Tyler, they give us a month of running the ads up there. It creates awareness for our nonprofits. We have seen awareness of the Restaurant Association and our culinary programs that benefit our students more than double. $60,000 going out to high school teachers who need money for programs, to scholarship programs for students as they go into upper education. They create awareness in Tyler with their 6-7 boards there on all types of nonprofits. Right now, I know there's a Heroes Run in October for for veterans, raising money for veterans. By the way, I'm a veteran, United States Marine Corps. I know it's there because the digital board that's in my path going back and forth to work every day announces it at the traffic light as it rotates through. So their donations to our community, to our city, to our state. They mentioned Amber Alerts. They do nonprofits. They do things for the city. They do things in times of crisis, hurricanes, everything else. And that message gets out there. People see it. They're aware of it. It's very impactful. It's very beneficial to the community. Thanks.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. John Green.
My name's John Green. I live at 311 Don Coble Lane here in Longview. I'm here to support this common sense solution to move this project forward. I am not now, nor do I intend to be, a customer of Starbucks. But I own an advertising agency here in town, and I've done business with Lamar for over 30 years, not only in this market, but other markets. They're a very good company. They do what they say they're going to do. If they say they're going to take that board down, if we do this, that's what they're going to do. That'd be the worst possible thing for them to do, is not follow through what they're telling us here today. We do have a big digital billboard on the loop by Austin Bank that is lit on both sides. I've been a beneficiary of that board through our Rotary Club, putting our rodeo up there, keying off what he said. It was a very big plus for us to get that exposure at no cost. This just seems, I was on that committee, the mayor's task force, when we tried to revive the rules a little bit. Technology has come a long way. When I started doing billboards, people painted them by hand, either up on the structure or on panels in a warehouse, and put them back up. If you grant this, currently there's about 8 vinyls up in the city on those boards, the 3 that they're proposing to change to digital, and 5 that are at that tri-way location, because one of those boards flips 3 times. Those are vinyls that are stuck on there. Every time they change the vinyls out, they gather them up and they take them to our landfill and throw them away. This will be technology we will help from an environmental friendly aspect to alleviate that. I think it'll make our city look more progressive and help us with the whole redevelopment and attracting younger people to our community. I think this can be a win-win for everybody, and I appreciate your time.
Mr. Green, appreciate it. Wayne Frost.
Wayne Frost, 20 Thorn Tree. I was on the council when the 2008 one was done, right? It was 2008, the last amendment. Have we had any variances to this sign approved, to the sign ordinance?
We have.
We have? Okay. Any amount or anything like that?
Do you remember how many we've had? Mostly dealing with pole locations and heights when you've got great differences.
Okay. Well, when this came up, I noticed the signs in Longview. They were pretty trashy, a lot of them. And I thought particularly, there's one on 4th Street that I could, every day I went by, I saw it. And these things need to be done. And what this did was to start maintenance and cleaning up these trashy looking signs. To me, what's happened here, we may have some unintended consequences, is what this is. And I think we need to work this out, because I'm for it. That's an economic situation we've got here. Development, taxes for the city. We recently gave a company money to keep them here. No increase in employees. And so I would think that we could work out something to develop that property. And that company that wants to come in there, man, they're the Walmarts of the coffee industry. And Walmart, when they come to a point where their store over here is not making much, well, they'll move down the road and build another one, keeping it in here. So I'm for this, and I think it'd be a good deal. But maybe if we could work out something else to suit everybody. But thank you.
Appreciate it. Karen Maines.
Good morning. I'm Karen Maines. I live at 3014 Bill Owens Parkway here in the city of Longview. First, let me thank all of you on the board for your service. You don't always have an easy job. I know that from experience because you can't please everyone all the time. I learned that because I served on the Planning and Zoning Board for 10 years, and I also was there during the original sign ordinance and the landscape ordinance and several ordinances since then, the dumpster ordinance. That was dramatic. You can't please everyone, but what you have to do is your job up there. When we noticed over the years in those meetings at the Planning and Zoning, there was increased attendance. People started seeing it on the TV channel that the city runs. Only a few people would show up at first at those task force meetings. Sometimes no one showed up. Sometimes it was just us, the task force members or the commissioners. But slowly, as different ordinances were adopted, addressing people's concerns, the people that spoke, more appeared at the meetings, and more. People realized they were being heard and listened to by the city staff, by the council, the mayors that have come and gone. Hundreds and then thousands. When asked what they wanted, things rose to the surface. Quality of life issues and beautification of our city that we often take for granted. People were tired of the trashy appearance that we just had accepted as normal and the cost of doing business. First it was the dumpsters and the weedy lots. Things improved. Then it was signs. They were everywhere. You've heard that addressed. Flashing, fluttering, popping up like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Rezoning to commercial just so a building can, whoops, hang on, got my notes wrong. After multiple open meetings, hundreds of speakers, citizens wanted change. They wanted fewer signs. You heard the city staff talk about the response to the surveys, the comments at open town hall meetings we had at Mod Cobb and that we had at LeTourneau University. At those meetings, sign company and billboard company representatives were there and spoke. But the citizens won out, resulting in the sign ordinance that we've had now for quite some time. During the comprehensive plan town hall meetings, the opinion of citizens of Longview was the same. You heard quotes from Mr. Shirley on that. Fewer billboards. Thousands of people spoke and gave their opinions. The wishes of thousands of people went into the comprehensive plan that was adopted. And that comprehensive plan guided the bond election that was voted into approval to increase a tax amount to see things done in this city. Several fronts, including beautification. So a standard was established, supported by the people of Longview. And now business wants to take an exception to the standard, a standard that was supported by the people. I am definitely pro-development. I think if it's done well, it's a boon to the citizens, to the tax base, to everything. Sometimes you have to disagree with people to get there. But as the city of Longview's citizens wanted to see limitation of signs, we have to consider their wishes. It's no different than having standards for, say, your son or your daughter. Maybe your child is not the most popular. Maybe it's had a few rough years. But there's still a future ahead, speaking metaphorically about that corner of 80 and McCann. But here comes Mr. Popular and Flashy, making promises, I'm going to do good things for you, waving lots of money. Why wouldn't you want me? Change for me. Saying, it's okay to throw your standards away for me. You can trust me. Just this once, it'll be okay. Really? Really? Are we so desperate for this particular suitor, for this particular location, that we'll compromise our standards? I appreciate each of you volunteering your time for this board. The pressure can be huge. Please remember the thousands of citizens of Longview that took their time to attend meetings, answer surveys, and vote, trusting that the ordinances they supported and adopted will stand for a better Longview. Wouldn't just be tossed aside for an out-of-town company making promises. If the ordinance need changing, let's do it the right way. Do what's right with public input again. Bring everyone to the table. I know it's a long process, but is it really wrong to do it that way, or is it better to do it really flashy and fast like this? Based on the comments by Mr. Shirley, are you even in a position to do this, or is it violating your job? I think I would sit back and table this item and let it move on to a different format for consideration. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, appreciate it. John King.
John King, 1508 Noble Drive, Longview. I am for this development. Couple things. Day number 1056 of Waffle Shop sitting there in its state of decay. Couple things. I just want to be brief and say that I think this is a bigger symptom of Longview in general. I see some faces out here. 2003, a lot of us were in college, high school, somewhere in there. And now we've chosen to come back to Longview, make this our home, make it different, make it better, make it change, make it a place that people want to come back. And I think this is a smaller symptom of the Highway 80 corridor, people coming into our town, seeing a dilapidated building, retention of good talent, retention of good talent, is this on? Retention of good talent, and really compounding upon what the bond issues that we've voted for, upgrading our parks, our social services, everything here. But I see a lot of folks are a little apprehensive on the sign ordinance itself, or at least the variance that we're going for. And I think the larger question is this good for Longview? Is this good for our town? Is it good for 80? In our last meeting at the Chamber building, we had someone break it down pretty simple and ask, so the big concern with when they changed the sign ordinance years ago, 16, 17 years ago, the big question was, we want to reduce clutter, we want to make things look more uniform, we want to make them look better. And one citizen said, so let me get this straight. We're losing 3 signs, and the clutter that has already been there for years, if you want to call it that, the clutter that's already been there is just getting a modern update to one side of it. Yes, that's exactly what it is. So I would have to say that we've put a ton of time and effort into this. We've had a great seller of the property over here, Mr. Olds. He's stuck with us. Not many sellers would stick through 2 years of contract extensions. And we've had a great team with Mark and with Dan working towards a solution here. I feel like we're really fenced in by rules that were written 16 years ago, and we're fenced in by things we did to ourselves. And this would be the gateway to opening that up for a change. Imagine your phone in 2003. I don't even know if I had one. And if I did, it sure as heck didn't have a screen on it that showed pictures. But I think that today what we really need is for everybody to take a look at what Longview Highway 80 is in the larger ordinance of wanting this to be a beautiful city. Highway 80 is not the gem of the city. And anything we can do to beautify that corridor right there, I think it needs heavy consideration. And I appreciate you guys listening to us. And this has been a passion of ours for 2 years. And I know that we can skip over a few things because it's just so second nature to us. But I think the bigger, more important issue is this is a great stepping stone for Longview to become the city that it will be one day, in the fact of, you see digital go down I-35, go down anywhere, Nacogdoches, Corpus Christi, Tyler, etc. Why aren't we there? Thank you all.
Thanks, appreciate it. King Gadri, is that how you say it?
Gidry.
Gidry, okay.
It's close enough.
All right.
King Gidry, 2912 Red Gum Gap. I'm just going to read from a prepared statement. The Zoning Board of Adjustments was created for one purpose: to make special exceptions to the terms of the zoning ordinance that are consistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. I stand before you today and urge you to deny this request, for the request in itself is in complete contradiction of the existing ordinance. This committee not more than 10 years ago denied a simple request for a variance from Lamar, just to repair 3 existing signs. In the end, even after court appeal, Lamar was forced to take down those signs which were in violation of the ordinance. Lamar and Starbucks must learn to work within the system that all developers in Longview and surrounding areas are required to do. Today, Lamar and Starbucks wish to take an ordinance that strictly prohibits digital signs and ask you to throw away and defy a law that was the culmination of a city task force passed by planning and zoning and unanimously passed by the city council. If Lamar and Starbucks wish to erect digital signs, they must go back to the drawing board, reestablish the task force, ask the citizens again what they want, and effectively change the law. To allow development in violation of our ordinances through power and money diminishes the very purpose of the law. If you vote yes today, you set a precedent that lets everyone know our ordinances may be circumvented just for the sake of development by those who have influence. Again, I urge you to vote no on this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Mr. Pirtle, Steve Pirtle.
Hello. Thank you for being here. I'm Steve Pirtle. I live at 602 Regency. I'm the sitting councilman for District 6. This is in my district. I'm not for the signs, believe me, by no means. I do believe that they are a clutter, but at the same time, there's numerous ones in here that sit up at that table with me that are here today. We have to look at it from the standpoint of what it does for the city. I'm charged with two things for this town. One is protecting the citizens the best I can, and the other is to promote development. I do believe that technology has changed over this time. Like I say, this is in my district. It's a gateway that comes into this town. 31 comes into this town probably more than it does Marbley or it does down 259. Economics drives this town. Everything we do in here is for money, from our budget to our raises. Everything we do for this town depends on bringing capital in this town. The 7 of us that sit up there are charged with that. Now, I'm not speaking for the rest of them. I'm speaking for me alone. I'm not speaking for anybody else on the council, the mayor, or any of the council members. I do believe it's a good deal to look at this because what we've got coming in here is a name brand company that I think I've never seen go out of business. I don't drink coffee, so it doesn't really make me a whole lot of difference on that. But it does bring in almost $2 million worth of development to that corner versus $400,000 that we've got sitting there right now. It produces tax base for numerous schools, county and the city. It produces jobs for a lot of people. And I think I would be remiss if I did not sit up here and tell you that I'm for it from that standpoint. Now, are we opening up Pandora's box here? We sure are. But I'm going to propose to the rest of the council that we go back and look at this ordinance again. But in the meantime, we might lose a chance at getting something that develop that. I've seen the plans on it. There's not a whole lot that can be put there. That sign is right in the middle of part of that building that they're proposing to build right there. There is something that I would want done, so if the council did look at this, or if y'all did pass this, that maybe we could put some stipulations on there from Mr. Finley, the city attorney, that he could look at, is that if this did pass, that they could not put up these signs if it passes until we get that sign down. Now, I'm not sure how legal that is, if it's legal, if it's not, you know, we'll have to find out from the city attorney. That's the boss that the 7 of us have. But I do think it's a good opportunity to promote development on Highway 80. I've talked to numerous businessmen on that highway, on that stretch right there. I'm not going to name them, but I've talked to 3 or 4 of them there, and they were all for it. I've looked in this packet right here. I've seen 1 out of about 7 or 8 that were against it. So that means 7 to 1, just looking at it that way. I've only had 2 people call me over the last few weeks and tell me they weren't for it. And I can't even count the many people that have contacted me and told me that they're for this, that we need to change this and look at this. So I'm going to propose with some of the other council members, if they will go with me, at looking at this and reconvening this committee again and see if we can change some of this. Technology has changed, like I said. There are more accidents in that cell phone that you have from kids and parents, myself included, texting and looking at the cell phone than it is at that sign. I've never really noticed the amount of signs in this town until this came up. I really never paid attention to the ordinances on the signs at all. But the only signs I really ever noticed before that were the one on the loop by Austin Bank, the 2 or 3 that are in town that have the lotto on it. Everybody looks at those. And then this sign at this corner that changed, especially when it had First Baptist Church on there and then the Michelob or the beer commercial right behind it. So, I mean, it was kind of a, you know, it's kind of a funny deal. I know the locations of the other 3 signs. One of the ones that was against it was the hospital. And it's real ironic. I drove by there this morning and they're using one of those signs. So it's kind of like you're going against yourself here to me, the way it looks. But I look at it from an economic standpoint. We're told we're not supposed to, but us 7 people are the ones that that it falls on. And we're the ones that have to be responsible to everybody in this town to make sure the bills are paid and things get done like they want them. The streets are fixed and we have everything that they need. So I'm looking at it from that standpoint. It may not be the right way, but we may need to go back and look at this ordinance and see if we can change it. So that's the reason I wanted to support it. So thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes, and I will make a note that we did receive in this packet several different emails and one letter from Good Shepherd. All the emails were for it, so I think there were 8 or 9 emails. So, and as far as whether this board needs to hear this, I mean, sounds like y'all been looking at this for 2 years, and we've been presented with it. So, I'm sorry.
More speakers.
Okay. Thanks. Mr. Robert Olds.
Good afternoon. It's after 12 right now, I think. I'm the guy that owns the building that we're talking about up here in the corner. And I just wanted to say hi, and that's my fault. I'm the one who brought it up here. So, but I did find a few things that I've heard discussed around here that nobody seems to look at. Let's suppose you do have the digital signs around the city, other places. What does it work for the city? How does it work for you? Well, let's say there's some catastrophe come up, whatever it is, that you consider that you should contact the citizens over. Guess what you could have? You could have them lead you a little way to get in there and overcome the signs and put your message that you want for your own constituents and help save some of their lives or livelihoods or houses or whatever that you need to do. And that seemed to be nothing that's been quoted around here or talked about. Second, the city, of course, using this capability would give you other things you could do with it too. I'm not going to discuss those. Some of those could be a little dicey to add into there, but that's up to the city and the city fathers. In any event, my name is Robert Olds. I live at 4806 Vivaldi Crossing up in Sherman, Texas. And so glad to meet you, and so good luck.
Thank you, appreciate it. Jay Knight.
Jay Knight. I live at 6092 East Country Club Road, but my business is located at 102 North Spur 63. Michael's a friend of mine, makes some very good points. Your details give me a migraine. But I've been on 2 inner-city trips with the Chamber, and so I'm familiar with the long-term comprehensive plan, and I think the sign ordinance is a good thing. I don't like billboards. No offense to my friend Dan. Where'd Dan go? There he is. In fact, we can't get away from advertising. I resent the fact that when I fill up my truck with gas, an advertising pops up and I have to listen to it, and so I get in my truck to get away. But I am for the relief of the ordinance. I'm pro-business. And while I'm very much for the aesthetics of a pretty town, to eliminate billboards and get rid of these things, the other thing about the long-term comprehensive plan is that how do we draw businesses into Longview? And on those trips that we make, we go, how do we get people, how do we draw new citizens in? And in particular, we are worried about how do we get young people to come in, and how do we get arts, and how do we develop the town to attract those kind of people? And if we don't get businesses here, we don't have anyone here for the city to be pretty for. And so I like the sign ordinance. I think it's a good thing. But in this case, we have so many people that come in via that intersection, and it's so miserable to look at. And we have some potential now for that intersection. With Regions Bank having come in place with the Jack in Box, that intersection is kind of looking up. And frankly, I just think we should be rolling out the red carpet for this opportunity to upgrade that corner. It just seems like 1 in a million chance. There's not merchants lining up to come into that corner. There's not very many people that want to be there, as evidenced by the fact that it's been sitting there empty so long. I just think we should be doing everything we can, and we don't trash the sign ordinance. It's a good thing. I just think we make an exception to the rule. I just think it would be wonderful to finally get something there. And though I live in Longview, I serve on the United Way Board of Smith County. And I don't know all the details of the lawsuits involved with Lamar in the past, but I chaired a subcommittee on that, and Dan from Lamar sat on that committee with me. And like the gentleman from Tyler that spoke from the diner, I believe, I found Lamar to be a very good partner with us. And so they more than once used their signs to in a philanthropic way, and allowed United Way to advertise different things on there when they had blank space. So that was a side I thought that maybe wasn't being portrayed for them. So I found them to be a good community partner. You have a difficult task, so good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, one more? Okay. Mr. David Wright.
I'm David Wright, 3700 Holly Trail in Longview. I don't think anybody would deny that they would like to see that corner cleaned up. It's not a pretty corner. It's not, when you come right into the city, it's obviously not a pretty corner. Except maybe the Waffle House Museum might like to see that building stay there. But Steve Pirtle's Pandora box that will be opening. We've already been to court once because of this ordinance, and the court affirmed that what we were doing was correct. And I hate to see, if we grant this variance, that we end up back in court because we won't grant somebody else a variance. I think, I'm also on the city council, I think what would be great is if you guys could table this and kick it back to the city council so that we could work on this again and make any modifications that might need to be made. Thank you.
Thank you. Frankie Parson.
Good afternoon. I am Frankie Parson. I live at 110 Fontainebleau Avenue here in Longview. I've lived in Longview twice. The second time has been 24 years, and I care deeply about our city, as obviously everyone else that has spoken does as well. Everyone has made really good points. I do honor and respect everything that they have said, but I would like to give you my comments, if I may, and I will just read them quickly. I do definitely support and encourage the redevelopment of critical corridors in our community, and this is clearly one of those. I do support and encourage this development project being discussed today between the local entities, Lamar Companies, and Starbucks. However, I can see no good reason for you, the ZBA board, to waive the existing sign ordinance in order to make the proposed redevelopment happen, and no reason for the project to be held hostage should it not be waived. The current ordinance allows for the placement of billboards in commercial and industrial zones, as you already are aware. Lamar could and should simply find another location for the new boards within the guidelines of the ordinance and allow the project to move forward. I would ask that all of you please have some respect for the ordinance that in the years 2002 through 2008 were discussed and vetted thoroughly, and more recently through the comprehensive plan. Nothing has changed since those comments and that input, except maybe the technology for digital signs, which should really make no difference because a billboard is a billboard regardless. A billboard is a billboard. The intent of the existing sign ordinance was and is to clean up our city, to reduce eye clutter and refrain from creating more safety obstacles. The only assurance being offered from Lamar is if they digitize 3 additional signs, they will take down the tri-billboard. Being good citizens, they still could do so following the existing ordinance. That's why I say this project is unnecessarily being held hostage by their request. These tactics should be opposed by this board. Putting 2 digital boards within 3 miles of each other on Loop 281 is eye clutter, does not clean up our city, and creates additional safety obstacles on the most heavily traveled sector of Loop 281. I would suggest that this is not an either-or solution, as there are other options that are worthy of consideration that need to be considered. And for the above reasons, I recommend that you decline the 3 agenda items before you today. I sincerely thank you for your time and your consideration, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Jason Warner?
Jason Walker, 1407.
Walker, okay.
Yeah, Walker, 1407 Sleepy Hollow Lane, here in Longview. I just have a couple of very brief observations and comments. I guess first I would consider a good time to grant a variance to be a time when someone can demonstrate that existing zoning or ordinance requirements, present difficulty in making use of the property. And I think everybody here can probably agree with that's kind of the situation that we're looking at. And the only other, I guess, observation that I've made, especially being here today, is that the standards that we're going by today are dated, very dated. And I would like to, I would like to think that the public input would verify that the dated ordinance that we call standard today should be changed. And I would really like to encourage a more in-depth look at that. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I guess my question would be, as far as if we table this, I mean, it's been known that these negotiations have been going on for 2 years. So why hasn't this been addressed by the council since? I'm just curious in the meantime. Is there?
Has Lamar, anybody had discussions with you?
Yeah.
Or
Yes, we've been discussing it for about a year and a
Can anybody from
half.
the council speak that Lamar has approached you in 2 years and asked for consideration of?
Well, I don't know if they've approached anybody else, but I do know that I have not been approached by Lamar to consider this. And what I'm kind of wondering is, why is this, if this has been going for 2 years, why are we just now doing this with you guys?
Yeah.
Why wasn't it done sooner so that we weren't, everybody wasn't kind of backed into a corner? I may not have this correct. I mean, it may have been done, should have been done sooner or something like that, but to me it looks like it's being done at the last minute and pushing you guys into a corner when we could have done something about it earlier.
I think most of us can speak as citizens. We've been approached and said, you do, approve, or you do want digital signs, and I'm all for digital signs. I'm all for, any consideration, and thank you guys for your development. I'm an entrepreneur. I've put my own money and had to approach ZBA and get variances in Lubbock, Texas for parking and other things. And generally, to me, that's what a variance is. More minor things, to me, this is like just to me, this is nullifying current city, signing. And, I wonder if Joe Blow's got $50,000 and he's going to go, put in an investment somewhere that's not so visible, whether or not we would be considering his investment and maybe a sign issue there, would that be in front of us today, right? Anyway, so, I've probably got other questions for you guys in a sec, but I'll let these guys.
May I comment?
Yes, sir.
I was born here in Longview, raised in Longview. I care deeply for it. I own businesses and property in Longview. I am a business person, have been, had my own business now going on almost 50 years. And media is important to the businessman, whether it's on a billboard, newspaper, handouts. It's important to business to be able to survive anywhere. And in Longview, I think it's utmost necessary. The billboards, I don't disrespect anybody else's opinion about aesthetics on signs. That's not the point. It's a matter of how restrictive and regressive do you want to be with ordinances that restrict business that you want, that you need, that support all your public activities, your churches, everything. Longview depends on business and wants business and tries to attract it, and you turn right around and do something that's contradictory with very restrictive ordinances. It sounds like, it's like the little boy went up to his daddy and said, Daddy, I want a dog. Can I have a puppy dog? And he says, sure, son, you can have a puppy dog. You sure can. But we got some things we got to work out first. Here's what dog has to meet this criteria. His nose to the tip of his tail has to be at least 6 foot. His ears can be no longer than 2 inches. His legs can be no longer than 2 feet. So, so he says, well, let me see if I can find a dog that meets this criteria. He goes out there and he doesn't find it, but he talks to his friend, Johnny, and he says, Johnny, my daddy said I could have a puppy dog. He said, but this dog has to have at least 6 foot long. His ears can only be 2 inches long. It has to. He's even said he had to be a dark color. He can't have bright eyes that can be seen. I had to put a black collar on him. He says, wow, man, I'm glad he's not my daddy. He says, we were talking to my parents, and he said, we want to build a house in your community, and but we found out that your daddy is on the homeowners association, and if he's that persnickety about a dog, what's he going to say about a $2 million house? So, the same little parable there. You've got all these restrictions. You want business, you want activity in your community, and yet you put restrictions on them that are really restrictive. And I understand the aesthetics. Everybody's nothing like billboards, and I respect that. But I think there's, like Wayne Frost said, there's a compromise to be had. Mr. Pirtle, you can take it before the council, and these things can, I think, be worked out to be suitable for all parties involved. That's my opinion. That's strictly my opinion. You have, Michael, I respect your opinion. Ms. Maines, I respect your opinion. But it has to do, in this instance, I think, with business, a development that's important to Longview, in an area that's important to Longview. And I make a motion that we accept these motions.
Do I have a second, or do you want to speak?
No, I want to make a couple comments before we get ready.
All right.
And I thought I was taking good notes, and I may digress, so bear with me. I do appreciate you guys giving us the sign ordinance and all the data. Our purpose as a variance board is to give variances. It's not to go, oh wait, that's the ordinance, so we have to stick with it. Then why are we up here? We don't even need to be here if we don't have any autonomy. There's different things you can look at in different situations that you have to address, and those are the things that have you vote one way or the other. It seems like they've done their due diligence. In this situation, there'll be fewer boards. One thing that wasn't brought up that I've heard through scuttlebutt through different ways Tyler addressed this. You know, Tyler wants to be on the heels of Plano and Frisco, and we kind of lag behind a little bit, in my opinion. They've addressed it. It's cleaned up a lot of their billboard and their signage, and it seems like most of their population are happy with it from what I have read. I think that maybe kind of like what Councilman Wright said, what David said, you know, worst case scenario, I think this is going to spurn them to have to address it on the city council. The reminder again, and I can't be emphatic enough, that's why we're here. We're a variance board. We get variances all the time for situations where, you know, maybe 20% of the people are enthusiastically upset and stand their ground. And I mean, I could give you many stories of the after conversations walking out of this room, which aren't that comfortable. However, at the end of the day, that's our point as a variance board, is to give variances. And people are going to have disagreement. I love these folks to death at the city. They're great. I've worked with them on a couple different projects, and I love working with them on this board. But I kind of disagree with the whole semantic, the whole thing here, and that's the fact that if we're here, obviously we have the autonomy to do this. That's why I was asking that question to you, Michael, is if we're not supposed to be here, if we're not supposed to address this, then why are we here? Then, you know, I feel like we have the autonomy to do it. If it opens up some sort of something later in the court, so be it. That's not what we're addressing, and we're not addressing the sign ordinance. That's for a recommendation committee. That's for P&Z, and that's for city council. We're a variance board. So, and me personally, I'm for it. I'm for the development. I don't feel like they're holding us hostage like was said. I think a few different gentlemen have good points regarding Lamar and their relationship with this community and others that show that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. I mean, you got to have some kind of faith. If there were a way to put something in there to go, okay, like I think maybe you mentioned earlier, someone mentioned earlier and said, I think it was Steve Pirtle, said, who's my counsel, if they don't do that, they don't get this. They do this before they get that. Okay, so be it. Take down that sign, because everyone in here, I think 100% of people in here agree, that's the major thoroughfare coming into Longview. That is the gateway, and that sign is ugly. And 3 of them are coming down to make 3 others digital. That's, to me, it seems like a pretty fair trade-off. Yeah, you could go back and say, well, if those signs were removed or changed according to the city ordinance, then that, okay, they're automatically not grandfathered. I understand that. That's the point of why we're here, is to go, okay, we're going to let you take down a paper sign that sometimes have extensions and other things going on to have a more professional appearing sign, you know, presentation. I think it's a no-brainer. There's good points on both sides, but I just think it's the greater good.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I got some questions for Lamar. Lamar mentioned that there was several years left on the lease on that sign. How many years are left on that?
It's in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 years at this
8 or 9
moment.
years. And so the gross income on a sign like this would be somewhat in the ballpark of?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first
The
part of the
gross
question.
income on a sign like this is somewhere in the neighborhood of what, 10, 15,000 a year?
I mean, it's so arbitrary because of the nature of the economy. I don't have that data with me because I wasn't asked to prepare that.
Right. So, and then the economic increase that you'll gain from having digital signs instead of the static signs that you currently have, is there a profit and loss on that?
Well, we're incurring a lot of investment costs with the digital conversion, so it's a multi-year type of payback looking at doing that.
Because it seems to me that if you are able to sell more advertising, that's going to offset, a loss of the cost in that sense. But if I hear you right, if there's 8 or 9 years left on this sign, and let's say it's $15,000 a year, and we're talking about $120,000, $140,000 in lost revenue if you take the sign down. Does that sound about right?
It's a varying scale. As everybody that runs a business and operates a business, it fluctuates
Right.
year to year to year.
But we're talking about a $2 million project and a $140,000, let's say a $200,000 problem.
Well, I mean, I just saw the stock market go down 1,000 points last week, and that's the kind of thing we're subject to all the time.
Correct. Right, okay. I was just trying to figure out what the economic impact for you guys was and the payback as well, obviously. It seems like you're going to derive a benefit of the neo-digital signs. Obviously, economically, you're going to get an increase in your...
We're actually just looking at it from a signage standpoint. It's an overall reduction of the amount of sign faces that we have physically and square footage in that pool of signs that are involved in this case. In regard to the revenue, whether they're converted to digital or they stay static, they're all going to be subject to the same economic components that we have today. So it's really more of a reduction in what we have today.
So are you saying that in general, digital signs don't make more money than static signs?
It's possible that they can, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
No, that was it
Okay,
for me.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dutch. This is definitely, a tough one, but I agree with Jason. I mean, we are a variance committee, and so that's what we do. So at the end of the day, if there's an attempt to overturn that, then so be it. I do think we should vote on this today. I think that, any delays in this is probably going, it could end up hurting the, Starbucks may decide that they don't want to do this. I know it's been going on for 2 years, so we need to think about that too. How many more years is it going to stay like this as an eyesore? So I'm moved that we do vote on this today. Yeah, and so I know Jim Mobley, you made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right.
Didn't pass.
Didn't pass. Motion denied. All right. Thank you all for coming.
We have two more items.
Two more items, sorry. On this, and it's pretty much the same type of deal. So we'll have Lamar, applicant, if you'd like to come up and speak. Yeah.
Are we addressing each one?
Yes.
Each individual
Yes,
separate one?
Each
So-
location, each variance request.
Again, my name's Dan Noyes, 3400 West Marshall. I'm with Lamar Advertising, and the same comments from the previous case apply.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that being the case, we're in a unique situation. So if the first one didn't pass, and we've got two more to address, one, is it a moot point? Two, are you guys going to bail if this doesn't go the exact way and not try to do something different?
We did work on this for a year or longer, as we've been talking about, and arrived at the 3-location scenario as being the most amenable to getting this moving forward, yes.
Yes.
So we just make a motion to vote, or what do we do?
Well, we'll listen to staff. Do we have?
Yeah, I mean,
Staff
so we
comments
can
on
go through
this?
the process, as far as staff comments. It's this, my presentation was across the board for all three. The locations don't represent any hardship. It's just an across-the-board waiver of the ordinance, but we do need to have a public hearing on each item.
Okay. All right. Well, do we have any?
Unless they're requesting to withdraw the last two items, and that's up to them.
Is there any requests to withdraw those two items?
We'd still like to vote on it.
Okay. Good.
Question, what is, if the other two pass, what is the result? What happens? What is approved?
Yeah, in other words, we wouldn't probably be
What is the
inclined
result?
to vote favorably if we knew we weren't going to get what the ultimate goal was, or part of a, spin-off of it anyway. Becomes a moot point.
And I think that's up to them, and that,
That's why I asked if,
I mean, originally, I would like to to table this and maybe gotten some folks, but, I don't know if we can do this at this point too, or, I don't know.
Well, that's been mentioned a couple times earlier about tabling it. I think David said it, and I think Karen or someone else said it. We don't get we don't get to work on things for weeks and talk to the community and all these things. I don't know if you're familiar with how this board works. We get a packet about 48 hours before. It is what it is. We're not allowed to make phone calls, emails, talk to folks, get a temperature. That's it.
Well, it's like we're quasi judicial though. I mean, our vote is.
I realize that, but I'm making sure folks understand.
Oh, great. And I would like everybody to understand that because he's absolutely correct.
Well, proceed us forward. Are there any public comments?
And I think when you start talking about tabling, that's basically saying we're not going to take a vote on it, but we're not going to hear it either, making a recommendation for it to just essentially go away.
Yeah, because this is where we hear it.
But
we don't get to do that.
I got you.
So I think, in lieu of the applicant not wanting to. Yes, they can.
You can table.
What I would recommend doing, and based on what the applicant has asked, is to continue on and open a public hearing, take comment, take a vote.
All right.
Or if you choose to table the items and say based on the first, the outcome of the first one, based on what they've said, it's an all or nothing kind of deal, and make a comment based on what the comments were, I would suggest you send it to City Council and make a recommendation that council consider it as a legislative
I would be
action.
inclined to support that.
Yeah, I'll support that.
We all support that.
Can I hear variance?
That's not what I said. That
Send it to council. Council
as a legislative action, which is what you're asking for.
No, we're asking for a decision from Board of Adjustment. Hang on. We're getting way out of control. Okay, Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial. They have a hearing in front of them. They can table, they can approve, they can deny. They can do all those things. That's absolutely legal. That's in your wheelhouse. You cannot send this to council. You can
I understand
deny.
that, and that's
Hold on,
not-
I'm
no.
talking. Thank you.
No,
You can deny it, you can approve it, you can table it, you can say, hey, why don't staff, we send this as a searching committee to rewrite the ordinance, but you're not in essence sending this case to
And I think you
council.
misunderstood what I said, because I didn't say send the variance to
We
council.
understand that.
I said
Okay.
they need to table the action and send to council a recommendation that they
Okay.
do legislative action.
Yes.
So,
I recommend we table it.
yeah.
So-
Is there a mute vote? So I recommend we table this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I would open the public hearing just to be on the safe side. But when it comes to the action that you take, that could be the action.
Yeah.
You do need to have a public hearing.
Is there any public hearing on this? No. Okay. Do I have a motion
Any motion.
to table this? Any motion whatsoever?
Me, I'll vote, yeah.
That's it. Motion to table.
All right. All those in favor? All opposed? All right. Going to the third item. So, another variance to 1621 West Loop 281. Do we have any staff comments on this one?
No additional comments, thank you.
Okay. Any public hearing on this? Any public comments? All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to table.
Second. All those in favor? All opposed? All right. These will be tabled. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.